Hello and welcome to the World Wanderers podcast, your source for travel stories, travel destinations, and travel philosophy.
I'm Amanda.
I'm Ryan.
And we're your hosts. Hello and welcome to another episode of the World Wanderers podcast. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by you, the listeners of the show. Thank you to everyone who supports us over on Patreon. We are so grateful for your ongoing support of the podcast. If you want to become a supporter of the podcast on Patreon, you can head on over to patreon.com/theworldwanderers. Along with being able to support the show for just a small amount each month, you get awesome goodies like postcards from around the world, one-on-one hangouts with Ryan and myself, and so much more. All right, on to today's episode of the podcast.
So today we are excited to bring you a little bit of a switch up from normal. We are turning the mics around and being interviewed on this episode. We were recently lucky enough to be interviewed by Michael on the Good People Effect. So we are bringing you that interview in full. We talk about lots of stuff from our past, some things that you've heard before on this show if you listened to a lot of episodes, some things you haven't heard before about our journey into a nomadic lifestyle.
Yeah, and so as you'll hear as we dive into this is an episode that was on the Good People Effect that was done with Michael. So if you like this format of the show, you should definitely go check out Michael's show. It's super awesome. He's got really, really interesting people, from meditation experts to professional freediver to so much other stuff. So lots of variation over at the Good People Effect, and it's really just about bringing awesome people to the show. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode with Ryan and myself.
Apparently, while you guys were in Peru, you tried ayahuasca, and I want to know what that experience was like. You've got 1 minute.
Oh, man. Ooh, that's a big question for 1 minute. Okay. Ayahuasca is...
Welcome to the Good People Effect. Have you ever heard that saying, surround yourself with the right people if you want to grow? Well, that's exactly what the Good People Effect's about. It's here to motivate your adventurous side. It's here to inspire your creativity. And it's here to fill you with a sense of purpose. It's here for you. So kick back, relax, and enjoy another episode of the Good People Effect. And tell some friends about it. Welcome to another episode of the Good People Effect. Today I've got a very, very sweet episode for you. It's a travel-based episode with Amanda and Ryan from the World Wanderers podcast. These guys are usually interviewing other people. Today I thought I'd flip the script and actually interview them. They're really, really cool people. They seek happiness through travel and adventure, and they grow, and they're continuously pushing their boundaries and putting themselves in situations to help themselves grow, which I think is awesome. We're going to have a chat today. If you're about to have an adventure or you're about to go on a bit of a travel journey yourself, then this is absolutely the episode for you. They're going to share some of their secrets, some of their tips and tricks, and some of their stories, which I absolutely enjoyed, and I can't wait to catch up for a beer with these guys later on down the track. I was meant to actually be having an episode with a Buddhist monk that was meant to be released this week, but that's actually being approved at the moment. It's going through a bit of a process, so that one's a little bit delayed. But if you're looking out for that episode, hold tight. It's not far. It's just around the bend, and that's going to be a really sweet one. That's going to be my first video episode ever when I launch my new channel in a couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that. If you haven't had a chance yet, jump on Instagram, check out the Good People Effect at Good People Effect. And if you want to say hi or just let me know what you think about the show, shoot me an email. It's Michael at Good People Effect. I'd love to hear from you guys. I love getting emails. But anyways, without further ado, here's Amanda and Ryan, and here's our chat that, was just the best. So enjoy.
Before we start, sorry, I just got to say thank you so much for being on the show, because I've been really pumped about this one for a while, and I'm really excited. Like, I've been excited for the last couple of days, and yeah, that's all I have to say. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, well, thank you for having us. It's great to be here. It's always fun when you do something like podcasting to get to be on the other side of it. So we interview people a lot more than we get interviewed. So it's always fun to talk about ourselves, I guess.
Yeah, something a little bit different, I guess. Yeah, I've only been interviewed once, and it was was quite a strange experience for me because it's like, yeah, it's weird. You're on the other side. You're not the one asking the questions, but yeah, feel free to ask me some back if you like. So
this is good.
This is going to be good. How did you guys get started on your journey?
Yeah, so we've got to back up a couple of years, I guess, like 9 years. 9 years ago, 10 years ago, we met and then started dating, and we met while we were in university studying business. And we both really wanted to travel when we finished university, when we got our degrees, and so we decided to do that together. So that was in 2011, and we took a big 6-month backpacking trip around the world. So we did Europe, we did Southeast Asia, we did Australia, New Zealand, and we came home so dirt broke that we jumped right into full-time jobs. And within the first couple of months of that, I feel like we were both just like, you know, we're like 22 and we're like, is this what we're going to do till we're 65? Like, this cannot be it. Like, we have to do something different. So we began to save our money and kind of concocted a new plan. We quit our jobs, sold our stuff, and went to South America within 2 years of returning from that first backpacking trip. And we spent 6 months down there, spending a lot of time journaling and having introspection and just trying to figure out what was next for us. Because we kind of felt like, you know, this whole like work full time, save all your money, sell all your stuff, go traveling, and then, you know, come back home and do it all over again was not really sustainable for us the older we got and the longer we did it. So we came home and moved to a new town and kind of had a career change. Do you want to take it from there?
Sure, yeah. So we moved out to a small tourist town in the mountains. We just really like focused on lifestyle. So I got a job at a cafe, and I got a job at a retail store, and that's when we started our podcast. So while we were traveling, we just had, especially myself, had been really interested in podcasting for years. I used to work in a vineyard, and so I just listened to podcasts all day, and I always had the idea that it'd be cool to start one. And while we were traveling, we're like, oh, you know, we've spent like a year of our lives traveling, been a lot of places. We should just talk about this. So we started our podcast just kind of talking about our travel experiences and kind of philosophy on life in 2014. And then have just kind of continued from there, documenting all sorts of changes as we've moved places and taking on different jobs and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, that's really how we got started. And so fast forward to today, what we do with ourselves is we do our podcast. Amanda has a different podcast, and then we have a number of other gigs outside of that kind of keep us busy and supported eating while we're living a somewhat nomadic lifestyle.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think just taking it back right to the beginning of that story, I think it's pretty cool that you guys, I don't know, somehow found each other and you had like a similar perspective and a similar kind of way of thinking and looking at things, and you kind of went through this journey together. I think that's really, really cool, and you're really, really lucky to have met each other and to be able to kind of meet someone that can kind of team up with you and go do all these awesome things together, and you know, you kind of check in with each other regularly. I think that's awesome. This is like so cool. That's like a dream.
Yeah, definitely. I think I know for myself, feel very lucky, just from like, you know, meeting friends. And there are obviously, like when we met 9 years ago, we're very different people and have changed a lot and learned a lot from each other, and kind of our values have converged because of all of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, find someone who, you know, share values with, you share kind of like major life philosophy, and then also just like, hey, we love to travel and we both want to pursue that with our lives. Yeah, it's pretty special.
So when you said you quit your jobs and went to South America, what was you guys said that pretty casually. I think that's a really big thing to do, and there must have been, I'm sure there was a lot of fear involved and a lot of I don't even know, like you guys would have been going through quite a bit internally, but what was the catalyst to that? So you said you went back to your jobs and you decided that you couldn't do it anymore. So you were kind of just, I guess, I'm not sure if this would be the right way to say it, but working to sort of travel, and then you'd spend all your money, you'd come back, you'd work again, and then you'd save up for travel again. But like, what was the catalyst for all of that? Or what was the moment, or what was kind of the moments leading up to that decision?
Yeah, there were a couple different things. I think in terms of picking South America, I had actually traveled to Peru. So we got back in at the end of 2011, and then in the summer of 2012, so about like 9 months after that, I went and met one of my girlfriends down in Peru. She was on a 2-month backpacking trip by herself, and I went down there for 2 weeks with my vacation time at work, and I just completely fell in love with Peruvian culture, Peruvian food, the things I saw. I came home and I was like, Ryan, we have to go to South America. Like, we have to see this continent. And Ryan was kind of like, I don't know, we kind of already did this thing. Like, I don't know if we should do it again. And I was like, well, just think on it. And I have this, like, maybe not so subtle, but I think it's kind of subtle way of being like, hey, come look at this photo of this really cool thing in this country. And so I just kind of like casually slipped these things in, and it didn't take long to convince him. Within a couple months, he was like, okay, I think I'm on board. And then for my birthday, a couple months after that, in February, he gave me a South America Lonely Planet. He's like, hey, I'm down. And
so it worked.
Yeah, within less than a year of that, we had made the jump to do that. But I think in terms of, you know, other things that kind of inspired us to go or kind of made us feel like we really needed to go, we were just in a kind of a bad place. Like, we were in a rut where we didn't spend that much time, like quality time together, even though we lived together. Our lives were kind of like go to work, go to the gym, come home, have dinner, like zone out in front of the TV for a couple hours, go to sleep, do it all over again.
Sure.
On the weekends, we would, you know, go out and party with our friends, and it just, it kind of was eating at us. Like, it's not that it's a life that, you know, somebody's listening and they're like, oh, that's my life and I'm happy. Like, that's fine. No judgment there. But for us, it was really not serving us and not making us happy. And then Ryan got a neck injury and things kind of went like significantly downhill from there. And we just needed a change. We needed to get out. We needed to do something different. And yeah, so it actually wasn't that hard to like sell our stuff and quit our jobs.
Yeah,
like,
you kind of got to that point. I guess it's about being honest with yourself as well, because kind of if that lifestyle or that kind of situation or routine isn't right for you, it's right for some people, but if it's not right for you, I think it's all about acknowledging that and just being really honest with yourself and saying, you know what, this isn't for me and I want something more and I'm going to do something. I'm going to take action to get myself out of this and sort of create the environment that I want to be in or the lifestyle I want to live in. It's really cool
definitely.
That you guys did that. It's really cool.
Yeah, and I think, so a friend actually messaged me today. She's thinking about, you know, moving back, like moving from Calgary in Alberta to Toronto, which is like across Canada.
Yeah.
She's like, I just feel like super scared. And she's like, I felt like you were a good person to message. And so I kind of was like talking with her about it. And she's like, how do you just do it? Like pick up and go. And I was like, it's not that it's not scary. It's always scary. Like there's always, you know, these fears and these worries that maybe it's not right or it's not going to work out or something bad is going to happen. But I think that the more that we do it, the more that we learn to trust ourselves and trust that it's going to be okay. So I think that having that 6-month backpacking trip the first time, it's like I knew that as much as like I was scared to quit my job and scared to sell my stuff and scared that maybe things weren't going to go well in South America, that there was also going to be really great things that came out of it because that's what had happened the first time.
Yeah, I think that fear is kind of, sometimes it can be a bit of an indicator that you're actually going the right way, as weird as that sounds. Yeah, I've noticed that in life, in my life, and even in friends, the life of friends around me. It just seems like every time someone's faced with that fear where they actually need to face it and overcome it, more times than not, probably every single time, actually, good things come out of that in a weird way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. So then obviously... So you guys quit your jobs because you obviously got hit with a bit of post-travel depression back then. And you started the podcast. What made you start the podcast in the first place? You said you've always wanted to do it, but what made you start a podcast? Because I know from my personal experience, the podcast has really helped me in a lot of ways in life, and starting it's been one of the best things I've ever done. So what made you start yours?
Yeah, so there wasn't there was kind of like a couple things. So, like I said, from the time I was young, I worked in a vineyard in the summer. So it's manual labor. You're just using your hands, but you're outside for like 8 to 10 hours a day doing nothing. So, I would just consume all sorts of podcasts, like, basically everything. Like, and at that time, podcasts was still pretty new. So there wasn't like a ton of good content, like enough that I was like, because I was listening to like 8 hours of podcasts a day, I like couldn't fill up my day with enough of the good stuff I wanted to listen to. So that was really when it started for me. Like I just listened to podcasts from, I guess that would have been like 2007, 2008, all the way up.
Days,
up to like 2014. And when we were, I think along the way, there was, the shows I really liked and enjoyed were just like people hanging out. So I really enjoyed like the Joe Rogan podcast. There was a Canadian sports show called Tim and Sid. They've since like made their way onto television and become a lot more like professional, but they had this podcast where it was just like a bunch of guys like hanging out, talking.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've taken elements of all those kind of podcasts and bring it into your own a little bit?
Yeah. So that's what I like loved. And then we were traveling. And it was 2014. We were backpacking, and I was like, "Oh, I wonder if there's like any travel shows that are like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have all these great conversations with people at hostels. We talk about travel and like what it means to us." And I was like looking through, and if you look in the travel section, especially at that time, it was just all these like language learning shows, but nothing that was really like just people hanging out talking about travel.
Yeah.
So then that kind of like got my idea, like, oh, maybe that would be cool to start. And then I was listening one day to an episode of the Smart Passive Income Show, where Pat Flynn was talking about how he started his podcast. He was interviewing someone who kind of inspired him to start his podcast. Mm-hmm. And then we were doing a trek. It was the Colca Canyon trek. And I was like, I should start a podcast. I was like, what could I do it about? And then I was like, me and Amanda could talk about travel. And then I like walked over because she was like a little bit ahead of me. I asked her if she wanted to do that. She was like, sure. And then that was basically it. So we went like a couple weeks later, we like started recording it like on our phone with just our Apple headphones. And then we got back to Canada like 2 weeks later. We bought a microphone. Mm-hmm. Found out how to set up a thing on Libsyn and just started right there. So, kind of just like a combination of things. But yeah, it was like loving podcasting, wanting to see like, oh, it'd be cool if there was this like travel show that existed, not really finding it. And then also just thinking, hey, it would be cool. And, a lot of it was selfish as well. Just like hearing, just thinking about how, it's such a cool opportunity to meet interesting people, such a cool context for the two of us to have deeper conversations about things that we may not have unless we were sitting down to talk it out. And then just flacked into kind of like
what we're doing right now, right? It's like we're just three humans on the other side of the planet from one another, and we're just having this chat about what we love and what we enjoy. It's just like it's kind of crazy when you think about it that way, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of, especially with some things, it's like I kind of think of it like a cheat code. Like so many people will talk to you just because it's like being recorded. That would never. If you were like, hey, do you want to just like Skype? You want to just Skype and talk? We'd be like, I don't know,
like
man.
having like, would you like to go for a coffee and would you like to come on my podcast and have a chat? It's a very different question, isn't it?
Yeah, it's got like a way less of a creep factor for sure. Like, I don't think it's like weird at all when somebody emails and is like, just like you did, like, do you want to come on our show? Like we do it all the time to people. But if somebody just emails is like, hey, do you want to go for a coffee? Just out of the blue, it seems kind of random. Although at the same time, being like based in Mexico City, we've actually had 3 people who listen to our show who have reached out to us being like, hey, I'm coming to visit. Do you want to go grab a coffee? And we've said yes to all of those.
That's so cool. Yeah. So you've actually met up with these people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's awesome. Tell me about Mexico. What's it like? Like I haven't been there since I was like 14. So I loved it when I was there. What's it like?
Yeah, Mexico City is really, really cool city. I was pretty anxious to come here. I just wasn't sure if I would feel safe on my own. Like, I don't want to have Ryan have to be by my side 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's really nice, especially the area that we live in. We're super central. We've got a million good restaurants around us. The people are really kind. And I like that the vibe here is not as touristic as a lot of other places in Mexico. Mm-hmm. I think that there's, pros and cons to that, of course. But as for us, we wanted to come here and we wanted to be engaged with the culture and to learn the language. And I feel like the best way to do that is to be able to go to restaurants and be able to practice speaking and that sort of thing. And nobody speaks to us in English here, which is really, really great.
Yeah.
And Yeah, there's like endless amounts of things to do here. There's, I think, 20 million people who live in this city, so it's just gigantic and always stuff going on.
Yeah, how's your Spanish going though? Is it going well?
Muy bien.
It's coming along.
Yeah, it's pretty good. So because we spent time in South America.
Yeah.
We're able to like get to kind of like the functional level where you can like go to restaurants, do whatever you need to do.
Yeah.
And now we're kind of like in that zone between being able to like easily get what we need to get, and sometimes it's a bit like clunky and awkward, but not like quite at that level where it's like, hey, we can just like make friends and have deep conversations. So
yeah, I think you're at a pretty good point. Like I've just started studying Spanish about 3 days ago, and I made it a commitment that I'm actually selling everything that I own and going to South America indefinitely and kind of seeing what happens in about 3 months. So I thought I'd really want to learn the language before I leave, and I'll give myself, if I spend 90 minutes a day, I can get to about 150 hours before I leave or something. So I think what I've learned from watching all these videos online, though, is that as long as you can communicate with people, you can always kind of chisel out the grammar a bit later on. And being in that location obviously is the best way to do it, because you're forced to speak it so often. So I think you guys, it sounds like you're on a pretty good track though, like to getting to fluency, or to at least being able to like communicate. That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like it'll probably hit you when you like land wherever you touch down in South America, and all of a sudden like you need to get a taxi and you're like, oh God, I don't know any of this vocabulary. And you're like, okay, Spanish lessons like right now. But yeah, no, that's awesome that you're doing that.
Yeah. And my philosophy on it is just like focus like completely on fun, and enjoyable things, and like not at all on grammar. So like I love Spanish music, so I've got like basically all I listen to on Spotify is like a whole bunch of like reggaeton songs, or like Latin rap. We have like a Mexican TV show that we like to watch. Yeah, I know like all the words to Despacito, and a number of other songs too. So just like singing along to Spanish music. I do Spanish lessons, but it's just me and a Mexican guy. We just like hang out and talk. And awesome. He tells me if I did something wrong, but there's no like formal grammar or whatever. And then you kind of just develop that like feel for it, like instinctually. I'm sure at some point, if I keep going, I'll get to a point where I'm like, you know what, I should really polish this up.
Yeah.
But like so many people, I think, try to like, they get so involved with like, hey, I need to learn the grammar, conjugation charts, whatever. And it's just boring. And like, pay for a language teacher who's like giving you homework and stuff. And it just like makes you like burn out. You should just make it fun, focus on fun, and really fall in love with the culture.
Yeah.
Like especially the people, a lot of people, and I'll end this rant sometimes too. Like think of like learning a language as this like utility thing, like, oh, I should learn Mandarin because that's going to be valuable in the future or whatever. But if you like really don't like the culture, then you're not going to really, it's going to take ages and you're never really going to like embrace it. Versus like if you really love like Latin culture, you're going to like want to learn how to like trill your R's and learn the accent and how to like speak and like embody it. So that's kind of my philosophy on it.
Can you roll an R for me right now?
No.
Hey, that's pretty good.
It's still a work in progress.
Sounds a bit Star Warsy.
It's better in mind.
Yeah, that was a bit chewy.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah, no, totally agree. Fun is where it's all at when it comes to learning a language, and that's a really good tip. Like, I didn't know it would go in this direction, but I'm liking it. I really am. And what do you think it's like, kind of being in that country where everyone's speaking it? Do you think it is a little bit daunting in the beginning? Like, I'm a bit worried about that, to be honest. Like, to land and have like no English anywhere, and just to be on my own in a way. Like, it's a bit freaky, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit daunting. It can get kind of like stressful to think that you can't communicate with people, but it's also remembering that we have so many other ways of communicating. Like, I mean, phones are a great way, like typing something into Google Translate, or, you know, even just writing something on the menu if you don't know how to pronounce it or they're not understanding it, just typing the word in, as well as like hand gestures. They go a long way to getting what you need. And so I think that, again, it's kind of like this trusting that you're going to be okay. And that's like been a very, very hard thing for me to learn over the course of my travels, because I like to be in control of things and I like to have things go well and go a certain way. And I've had to let most of that go because travel just throws all sorts of stuff at you. But it's just trusting that you're able to, you know, use a hand signal and kind of communicate, or write something on a piece of paper, or type something into your phone.
It's kind of being able to let go in a way. I think travel teaches you a lot of lessons, but that's one that hit me pretty hard as well. And I love how traveling pushes you in all these different directions and forces you to kind of face all these different challenges and helps you grow out of that. And that's just one perfect example of that. Do you feel like, obviously you guys have grown since you started, but do you feel the same way about travel? Or do you feel that that's what happens?
Yeah, I definitely think that I continue to grow as I travel, and I think that travel has shifted a lot, I think for both of us, but I'll speak specifically for myself, from, you know, seeing all these amazing things around the world, and like I certainly still love doing that, but it really gives me the opportunity to grow more as a person everywhere that I go. It's like, you know, even if I'm just dealing with a bus that's like overheated or in a long line, or for example, our bus was an hour and a half late when we were going from Mexico City to San Miguel de Allende, and it's frustrating. Like, that stuff kind of sucks. Like, that's the side of travel that's not so nice, but at the same time you can learn so much by standing there and being calm and taking it all in, and just seeing how you react and teaching yourself to react differently and being okay with things not going your way and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I guess the mentality when you travel is really important, to have the right mindset and to travel with, you know, with a lighter heart and a lighter mindset, and just and a way to make yourself pretty adaptive, I guess, make yourself kind of a bit more fluid, and then less rigid. And I think travel kind of helps you become that way as well, because of these kind of little things that come up. And if you're going to get upset about every time you miss a bus or every time something goes wrong while you're traveling, I mean, you're not going to be a very happy person, are you?
No, not at all, especially in South America. Yeah, you definitely learn how to kind of like regulate your emotions, and just like accepting things that are outside of your control is a big thing.
Yeah.
And then just like one more, so on that point about like travel, kind of helping you grow and helping you learn, like I genuinely feel like in 6 months of backpacking after finishing university, I learned way more than I did in 4 years of university.
Yeah.
Altogether, just about like personal responsibility and like other cultures, and even things like business and entrepreneurship and how money works from going around to a whole bunch of different countries.
The lessons probably would have been a lot more. They're different lessons, right? On one side, you're kind of learning about specific subjects, and then you're kind of learning more life lessons when you travel.
Yeah, absolutely. Like real, like tangible stuff. And it's, the lessons are kind of like you're uncovering them for yourself. So instead of someone telling you like, here is the lesson, it's like you're making all these observations from changing circumstances that are around you. And then you're making the connections, and you're saying, oh, that's what this is, or, oh, you know, that's what's happening here. And then it like connects with you on a much deeper level. Yeah. Because it's your insight then. And I think the other thing about why travel for us, and I think a lot of people, is such a valuable growth experience, is because it allows you to separate yourself from an environment that just an environment that you're used to. So, you know, when you're at home, or you're in a city you've lived in for a while, your social circle, your life is very habitual. The people around you kind of know you and expect consistency from you. But over time, you're learning new things. The things you care about and value are slowly changing. But it's kind of hard to fully like embody that change while everyone else kind of expects you to be like the same old you. Yeah. And so when you go away, this is kind of what happened for us when we went to South America. We had been, you know, changing over the course of years, but kind of still in the same track. And then going away for a long period of time really allowed us to kind of think about where do we want to go with our lives, and having that separation from like our social circle and our families and our, the city we lived in and our jobs really allowed us to kind of take a step back and say, where do we want to really go, and like how can we make that happen?
Yeah, like what the hell's going on, and what do we want out of this? Like, I think that's so important. That's like ridiculously important to actually stand back and analyze what the hell's going on. You know what I mean? And you're right. It's so hard to do that when you're in the middle of everything. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you there. I'm just pretty passionate about what you were saying. Like,
that was the end of the point. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry, I get a bit passionate when we talk about these kind of things. Like, I totally agree with everything you just said. Like, it's so right. Like, every single day you're doing the same thing. You're going to the same job. You're seeing the same friends. You're having the same conversations. You're in this kind of a loop where you can grow and you can learn, but I guess it's kind of limited by your surroundings and your routine. But then when you take all that away and you just kind of just let go a bit, and that could be through travel, it could be through many other things as well. But I think it really gives you a chance to expand your mind and learn new things, and like you said, push your boundaries and learn these life lessons for yourself. But I also think like listening to podcasts, like travel podcasts, and just listening to other people's perspectives outside of your circle allows you to grow, and taking it in and not thinking that, I guess, you know everything, and being open to other people's opinions and perspectives, that also helps. So I think like what we're kind of doing and having chats with each other and like allowing other people to kind of listen in on those chats, I think people can gain things out of that. And I think just when I listen to other podcasts, I know I gain a lot as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think even just talking to other people who are so different from yourself. I remember when we were on our first backpacking trip and we were staying in hostels kind of for the first time. I'd done like one other kind of Europe backpacking trip, and that was all. And just meeting so many people doing so many interesting things. Like, I felt like it just shattered my entire belief system of what I could do with my life. Like, I'd always just thought, I go to school and I get a degree and then I get a job and then I get married and I buy a house and I have kids and then I retire and then, I take this like once a year vacation. And I had never really, like, I think part of me had kind of questioned it and been like, oh, this is kind of weird, but I'd never really deeply thought about it until meeting people who are doing so many different things. And I was like, whoa, the world is like a big, gigantic place, and you can really do like anything that you want to do with your life.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting moment. That would have been cool just to think that. It's like, what the hell is really going on? Like this is all what I've kind of been kind of programmed to believe in a certain way. And now all of a sudden there's so much more. And that feeling that I had inside that things weren't quite right, it was kind of like that instinct was kind of like right all along. You know what I mean? Like that's really cool that you kind of, yeah, that's awesome. When did that happen?
It was in London, which was our second stop on our first big backpacking trip in 2011. So I would have been, how old was I, 22? Yeah, I was 22. And I can't remember what this guy did, but I just remember this guy, he was in our hostel and he'd been traveling for a long time. I don't know if you remember this guy.
Yeah, like years.
Yeah. And I think he maybe like sold stuff on the street or something, or busked, like played music or sold crafts or something. And I was just like, what? That's like not a living. Like, what? Like, what do you mean that's what you do? You've been doing this for years. And I think it just kind of like blew my mind that this person was doing this, and he was so casual about it and like talking about it like it wasn't weird at all. And I was like, this guy is so weird. But the other part of me was like, this is so cool. Like, people do this? Yeah. Okay, I'm in.
Yeah. Sometimes, I guess, just coming back to fear for a second, some people, I guess, are a little bit worried about doing things outside the norm because who knows what's going to happen, like kind of leaving themselves completely open. But I think at the end of the day, everything kind of ends up all right most of the time. I know that sounds weird, but that's kind of what I believe. And that guy obviously had that mentality. And it's so cool that you guys went through all of this and now look at where you are, like today in 2018, what you're actually doing, and what all the experiences that you've been through. Like, if you just think of every single experience that you've been through since that point, it's just a crazy thought anyways.
Yeah. And I'm kind of just done it a little bit earlier. But that moment, so it was like end of 2013 where we had both kind of dissatisfied with our jobs.
Yeah.
We were still very much on like the conveyor belt.
Yeah.
At that period of time. We had like that one travel experience, but that was very much like, in line with what was acceptable. You know, go to college, go for a backpacking trip, but then come back, start your career. Yeah. And that was the moment where it was like, we knew that we both weren't happy with the way things were going, but we had like no idea what we were going to do with our lives. But we weren't like, oh, in 6 months we're going to come back and we're going to move somewhere else and we're going to be able to like start this podcast thing, and that's going to lead to other opportunities, and that's going to lead to us like going to move somewhere else, and that's going to lead to like us being able to like make money as nomads.
There's no way to see that,
Yeah, it was basically just like I was worried. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Maybe like, am I going to be homeless? What's going to happen?
Do you actually think that?
I was like actually worried about that. But yeah, it was just like, this isn't right. I know that. I don't know what the next step is, but I just know I need to like jump off this conveyor belt and kind of have some faith that
it'll work out.
I'll figure out the next step. Yeah, and it will, and that's what it has done. And like, we've interviewed so many people on our podcast who have had kind of similar moments where they've had to just like take a bit of a leap of faith.
Yeah.
Where they really didn't know how it was going to work out in it. And it's worked out. Obviously, there's definitely survivorship bias. We don't interview people who it didn't work out for.
Yeah, but I think that even if it doesn't work out, and it kind of like everything you do that kind of you fail at, you can just kind of figure it out. You say, okay, recalibrate. I did this wrong. Next time I'm not going to do that. Let's try again. And as long as you keep trying again and you keep learning from those failures, then you're always going to be okay. Like, it's never going to be, unless some freak accident happens or whatever. But I think as long as you kind of learn from where you went wrong and you kind of adapt and adjust and keep trying and keep pushing, then things will work out. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. And I think that it's really easy to get kind of stuck in the mindset of like, what if this doesn't go well, or what if this doesn't work out?
That's real bad.
Yeah, I just feel like it's not a way to live a happy life or a productive life. Like, if you live your life like that, you're just never going to leave your house, and you're never going to try things, and you're never going to say yes to new people and new experiences. And I feel like, that's a big thing that we've learned through our travels, is we've just got to kind of jump, both feet in, and trust that we're going to surface and everything's going to be fine.
Yeah, that's the best way to do it. I was recently having this podcast with Dr. Craig Hassett. He's like a doctor of medicine and mindfulness. He's just this crazy cool guy that knows a lot about health. And he said it's even bad for your health. Like, there's things in your body called telomeres, and they measure how fast you age. And when you're worrying about the future and worrying about the past, you get into this like primal stress response mode, where it's kind of like you're getting hunted by a lion, for example, would be a situation where you would need to be in that mode. But people get into that mode when they don't need to be, and it actually makes them age a lot quicker. And it just has so many negative effects, worrying about things that have, worrying about what's happened in the past, or worrying about what's yet to come. And it's taking you away from living in the moment and kind of just going with it and kind of experiencing life to the fullest. So yeah, it's definitely that pocket where you want to sit in. Just be mindful and present and take chances, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, okay, I want to talk about what you guys do for money. Now, I know it's probably a question you guys get quite often, but I know you've got another podcast, right? So that one is about the business of yoga. What's that one called, Amanda?
It's called MBOM, which is an acronym for Mastering the Business of Yoga.
Okay, tell me a bit about that.
Yeah, so I got my yoga teacher training in 2015, cool. And when I entered the yoga world, I had come from this corporate background, and I still felt like really confused about how to create a career and be successful in the industry. Yoga teachers go through 200-hour teacher trainings in order to get certified as yoga teachers. That's the minimum that they have to do. And there is a business component, but it's very, very small. And I get it. I mean, 200 hours isn't that much time to teach yoga teachers how to teach yoga. And that's what it really needs to focus on is how to teach. But there's this aspect that's missing about how to market yourself, how to sell yourself, how to make money. Oh. And I felt like in my first 6 months as a yoga teacher, I just kind of floundered. And along the way, I was sort of learning all these different lessons. Like, oh, okay, I'm going to create this resume. I've got a background creating resumes. No problem. I can do that. Okay, I've got to do a teaching demo. Okay, writing this down so I know for next time. And at this point, Ryan had accepted a job in Atlanta, Georgia, and we had moved down there for 10 months. And at this point, he actually suggested, he's like, well, why don't you create a podcast on it? And I was like, oh, that's a great idea. So I started this podcast to focus entirely on the business side of yoga, to teach yoga teachers the business lessons that they weren't getting in teacher trainings. And basically I interview people for the majority of the episodes, and I just talk to people who are successful in the industry. So they're doing things from running trainings to international retreats to teaching studio classes, privates. I just want them to be able to share those experiences with my audience. And yeah, I'm on season 3 now. I think episode 84 is coming out on Monday.
Yeah.
And it's just been a really great learning experience for me. And it's allowed me to learn a ton, to the point where that I'm able to now share that with other yoga teachers who are coming into the industry, so I can help them grow their businesses. And so that's another part of my online business that I do with that.
That's really cool. That sounds awesome. It sounds like you're really helping people in a spot where it might be needed, like, pretty badly.
Yeah, I think so. And yeah, thank you for saying that as well. But yeah, it's just, I'm super passionate about it. It's kind of like my project that I really love. Like, I've just watched it grow really organically, and it's been cool to add sponsors to the show. And I have a private Facebook group that's growing like crazy, and, you know, working with more people one-on-one. And it's it's
got
awesome.
A few yoga instructor friends. I might have to put them onto it.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. So I guess that's one of your income streams is the other podcast, this podcast. How else do you guys kind of fund your travels and get by?
Yeah, so on my side, other than our travel podcast, The World Wonders, I do freelance audio production for a handful of other podcasts. So, you know, editing, putting them together, writing like show copy, helping launch them, all that type of stuff. And then I'm also a contractor for an education startup that's based out of the U.S. called Praxis.
Okay.
And there we help entrepreneurial, ambitious young people get apprenticeships in young growing companies, other startups, so they can really, you know, learn practical skills from reality as opposed to from a classroom.
Yeah.
So
that's
everything's
location independent. Like, you could do all of this from anywhere.
Yeah. The with that work, I do quite a few more calls. So sticking to North American time zones makes that substantially easier. But other than that, it's all remote.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I've got a couple of ideas of how I'm going to kind of fund my travels, and I've kind of set out a bit of a plan for when I leave, but it's always interesting to hear how other people are doing it. But yeah, mine are a little bit like what we said about before, what we spoke about before, the leap of faith. So I'm kind of going to go and kind of force myself in a corner in a way and try to figure this out as best I can. So I'm planning to just get like a little house in Patagonia, saved up a bit of money to kind of last me a little while, and I'm going to kind of work, 4 or 5 hours every day in the morning, and then earn my right to have a bit of an adventure in the afternoon.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to do it. I mean, I started working entirely remotely before Ryan did, and that actually stemmed from his job in Atlanta, Georgia.
Yeah.
I didn't have a work visa, and I made the choice to go down there. But because I didn't have a work visa, I couldn't continue my job with Lululemon where I was working at the time. And so I just had to do everything online. So, I took a yoga studio management position that I had in Canada, and I asked if I could continue doing it online. And fortunately for me, he said yes. And then I started MBOM, and we grew the World Wonders. And I mean, there's so many opportunities now, which is really, really cool. Like, there's sites like Upwork, and I mean, Fiverr's mostly design, but there's lots of different stuff you can find on there when you've got skills.
Yeah. So there's definitely plenty of options, I guess. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I feel like backing yourself in a corner is a good way to do it, though. It's kind of like if you're like hesitant about jumping off the diving board, but somebody's on the ladder up, you're like, well, I can't ask them to go back down, so I guess I've got to jump.
Exactly. Yeah. No choice. Okay, so I mentioned this a little bit earlier, so I'd like to fire some quick questions your way as a part of a brand new segment. This is going to be the first go of this segment. I've never done this with anyone else, so that's pretty special. So
fun.
Yeah, it should be good. So it's called The Good Stuff. That's what I've named it, and here's how it works. So I ask you guys a question that's designed to help people learn and grow from your experience, and you only have 1 minute to answer that question. But you need to give me the most potent answer possible, whatever comes to the top of mind, and just try to let's just try to help some people with this. So after 1 minute, I'll make a noise. I don't know what that's going to be yet. I haven't really thought it out.
Okay.
But then we'll
Can you do an elephant impersonation?
I can definitely try, yes. So I'll make an elephant impersonation. And then, so you guys can take turns, one question each, and then swap. So I'll go through a few. And
Okay.
How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds good. Do you want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so here we go. Okay, so apparently while you guys were in Peru, you tried ayahuasca, and I want to know what that experience was like. You've got 1 minute.
Oh man, that's a big question for 1 minute. Okay, ayahuasca is a deeply enriching experience. It's something that if you're going to do it, I think doing your research, knowing about the plant medicine, about the place that you're doing it and making sure that you feel really comfortable and safe is really important. And then going into it with a really open mind. There's, I think, almost no way of knowing what's going to come up for you during that experience. And therefore, if you're somebody like me who likes to plan everything, it's really, really hard to kind of just let go. But you've just got to let go. And again, like we've talked about throughout this episode, just trust that everything's going to be okay. And it's painful and amazing, and it's going to make you sick, and it's going to make you cry, and it's going to make you laugh, and you'll feel every single emotion. But it's just basically like instead of peeling away the layers of the onion per se of your psyche, it's kind of like blowing the onion apart. And
how was that elephant noise? That was really handsome.
I think it was okay. What'd you think, Ray?
It's kind of reminded me of like a tugboat.
Great answer, Amanda. I really enjoyed that. Okay, Ryan's turn. Here we go. Top tips for packing while traveling.
I feel like we should have done the opposite answers.
Make some more.
So yeah, I'm definitely not the most organized packer type.
Okay.
So my tip. Okay, a couple things. So if you're packing for a long trip, I'd say boil down to be ruthless about getting to where you feel like, okay, I've got only the stuff I absolutely need. Then get rid of half that stuff. Just force yourself to everything you think you need, and then you're forced to remove half of it. If you can travel with a half full backpack, it is just so nice. So we've spent so much time wrestling with our bags, trying to get them closed on backpacking trips, and it's just so awesome to have space.
More tips, less talking.
Yeah. So do that. You can buy clothes wherever you go. So don't bring stuff and just buy it wherever you get to. And the second tip, something that I've struggled with, I bring a lot of books when I travel. So buy a Kindle, because I've spent months legging around 12 books, which is not a smart idea.
Okay, good answer. Time's up. Amanda, do you want to add anything quickly to that?
Packing cubes are great. Somewhere to put your dirty laundry is also good.
Yeah.
You can get a backpack that's separate, has a separate compartment, either at the top or the bottom. That's a great place to put your dirty shoes, because when you're walking around all sorts of countries, you pick up all sorts of gross stuff. I'd say Birkenstocks are a really great shoe. Have a runner. Don't bring too much stuff.
Okay, awesome. That sounded pretty good. I like the teamwork there. So next question: travel slow or fast? Why?
So it really depends on how much time that you have. I think that if you work a full-time 9 to 5, you probably want to see more things. I think that slow travel is way better. Spending a couple months in a place really allows you to dig deep into the people that live there and understand more than just the tourist activities and the things that are in a Lonely Planet book or on the Wikipedia site like WikiTravel. I personally like traveling slower, but that comes from, also doing work on the road and just having traveled for so long. What else do I have to say about this? This is hard.
It's intense, huh?
Yeah. I think that give yourself at least 3 days in a place. There's places we've gone for only 1 day, and I really don't feel like you get a feel for a city in any way.
Okay.
If you're only there for 1 day.
Cool. That was good.
Yeah, and then the only thing I'd add to that is just, people should just do what they want to do.
Yeah.
There's so much kind of travel snobbery where especially on a long, if you go some places, you'll meet people oh, you only went to Italy or you only went to Rome for 5 days. I've been here for 6 months.
Yeah.
There's so much to see that you're missing.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you've got 4 weeks and you want to go see a bunch of cities, like that's awesome. But for us, we've definitely found that as we've traveled more, we like to do it much slower.
Yeah, I would 100% agree with that. We did an episode on the World Wonders a couple months back about, how to travel for yourself and why you should find your own travel style, because there is a lot of this like, oh, you're not a real traveler if you don't do this. You're not a real backpacker if you don't do this. And people have certainly hated on us with the podcast for things like that. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to pretend that I liked somewhere that I didn't like the food was crap. That's how I feel. If you liked it, that's cool. I don't judge you for that. So I think do you and be okay with that.
Yeah. Some people are just... No, that was fine. I'll let that one go because that was really good. I enjoyed that. But yeah, no one needs to listen to those people. Okay, so how do you stay safe in a country where people always warn you to travel to? Go for it, Ryan.
Where people always warn you to travel to?
Well, I feel like the media is always kind of blowing certain places up and making a lot of places sound dangerous. And a lot of people, before you leave on a trip, say to you, oh, it's really dangerous over there. I've heard this or that. I mean, how do you go about taking on that challenge, and how do you go about staying safe when you're in the country like that?
Yeah, so a couple things. I think pre-going somewhere, there's always going to be a certain level of anxiety, and as soon as you actually get somewhere and get there for 48 hours, a lot of that goes away. So, before we went to South America, I'd been reading all these stories about taxi kidnappings, and the first 5 times we took a taxi, I had my pocket knife in my pocket, and I was worried about where the car is going, all this stuff. Yeah. So I find when you get somewhere, when you're at the airport, there's always pretty safe taxis, or you can get an Uber, and then the people at your hostel really do know. They're other travelers, they'll be able to give you good information. And most of the people we've met who've gotten mugged while traveling have been doing really dumb stuff.
So places that they went out at night to a bar that they were told not to go in that area at night or something like that.
Yeah, it's don't walk by yourself at night in South American cities. Okay. After 10 p.m.
Sure.
Where there might not be other people around, or people Buenos Aires are don't go into La Boca at night outside of the super popular areas because you'll get mugged, and people do it and then they get mugged. And then so there's that tip, talk to people at your hostels. They really know, and they'll be able to give you tips. There's usually in cities, it's there are certain places that are dangerous, and there's certain scams, and people at the hostel will be able to tell you good stuff about that.
Okay, cool.
And the second point is, if you're somewhere, I think so for us in South America a lot of time, we just went out preparing to get mugged. So it's if we're going out to a club in Brazil, in Rio, we're let's just, if we were to get mugged tonight, what would we feel fine about losing? And just kind of go with that.
That's an interesting way of doing it. Yeah.
And then we never ran into trouble because, a lot of times you're not a target if you kind of don't have anything to be targeted for, if you're not wearing jewelry or whatever. But yeah, so those 2 things. Talk to people at hostels and just kind of, whether you're an Airbnb host or other travelers, and just kind of prepare for the worst circumstance.
Okay.
And be fine.
You'll be fine, yeah. Cool. All right. I think we went over a minute for that one as well, but I'll let it go because, really good stuff.
I was going to do the elephant sound, but I didn't want to interrupt Ryan.
That would be so good, Amanda.
It's
okay, so there's only a couple more questions left, so I'm definitely going to be throwing out some more elephant sounds if you go over again, but very good answer, Ryan. I like that one. I think it's all about common sense and just being aware, and everything you said was on point. I think that's awesome.
Trust your gut too.
Yeah, and if you want to leave somewhere, just leave. Don't feel weird about staying or anything like that.
Yeah,
if you feel
there's people who give off a vibe.
Yeah,
and you're oh, bad news. I'm not going to get in a car with you. I'm not going to give you my money.
Yeah,
just
those shifty eyes.
That.
You got to watch your shifty eyes.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you stick to a budget? Why is budgeting important? Go for it.
I'm glad that I got this one and not Ryan. So I find that there's a couple different things with budgets. There's pre-budget, so having a really good goal in mind. I like to create vision boards and have something that I'm directly working towards, so that I know in the morning, oh, do I want a $5 Starbucks latte? No, that's a meal in this place that I'm going to go to.
Saving for your trip.
Yeah. So budgeting beforehand is huge to be able to save. And then once you're actually there, I think looking at either a monthly or a weekly or a daily budget. I think that monthly works really well because some places are more expensive than others, but breaking it down into approximate day. So I know here in Mexico City, I spend about $25 a day, and that's my budget.
Nice.
And then taking out that amount in cash and knowing that you've got so much cash for the week and putting that in your wallet and only spending that. I think that there's definitely circumstances where it's nice to splurge and it's nice to take yourself out, but in general, trying to stick to those things. Another thing that we do is always cook breakfast. Breakfast is completely overpriced, and it's really easy to get like oatmeal or eggs or fruit or something like that. That's a great way to save some money. Nice
elephant sound. Sorry, I keep forgetting to make the noises. Okay.
That's okay.
How do you guys stay healthy and fit while you travel?
It's your turn.
Okay. So I think Amanda puts a lot more like intention into this.
Okay.
Usually, so over the past year, we've been working a lot more. So the travel has been different. But with our big backpacking trip in South America, the two kind of key factors for me were, one, we walk a ton, like, going out every day, exploring cities, or if we're going hiking, exercising. So just getting a ton of time in walking, and then also, just kind of being on a budget constricts the amount of food you eat.
Yeah.
And that kind of really did it. Do you have any other ideas?
Yeah, so I would say if you have a certain activity you like mine is yoga, always finding that in a new city or country that you're in. It's harder if you only have 3 days because you don't really want to contribute like a chunk to a yoga class. But when we stay for like 5 to 7 days, then we'll definitely find, find a yoga studio or something to go to. It's the same with like if you like running or CrossFit or that. They're all over the world. So just go find that place and check it out. I think also before South America, I read The 4-Hour Body by Tim Ferriss, and he talks about, doing a little bit of exercise really fast. So I think it's like 3 minutes to get your heart rate up. So I actually used to do that in hostel showers. I used to squat for like a minute and a half and then do wall push-ups for a minute and a half.
Yeah, just any way to get that exercise in. That's really cool.
Yeah, and you're not I'm not getting a 6-pack from that, but I'm also, between that and walking and things like cooking your own breakfast and stuff, that really helps.
Yeah, cool. Okay. And one more. I'm just going to throw this one in. I haven't written it down or anything, but I want to know about Patagonia. Can you guys tell me, have you been there before, or can you give me some tips, or if you have, and kind of just kind of fill me in a little bit?
Yeah, so we went to Ushuaia, Puerto Natales in Chile, El Calafate, and Bariloche.
Okay.
And we went right at the end of the season, so it was really starting to cool down.
What month was that?
April.
Okay.
April, yeah. So we went to do Torres de Paine in Chile, which is like probably the most famous hike down there, one of the most famous hikes. But it was just so cold and snowing, and we were not prepared for it at all. And couldn't actually see them the day because the trail was closed because there was too much snow. Anyways, yeah. So favorite things. Ushuaia was really cool. It's just right on the coast. It's very so many places down there. It's this desolate feeling, and I think people might have a negative connotation with like desolate, but I kind of like enjoy it. Have you ever seen the movie Into the Wild?
Into the Wild, yes, I've seen that. Good movie.
So there's Eddie Vedder did a soundtrack for the movie, which I feel like is like the soundtrack for Patagonia. It's this really kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but if you listen to that music and then you're in Patagonia listening to that music, it's just like, okay, this is where this was made for.
Yeah.
So El Calafate I thought was a really cool town, pretty small, right near Perito Moreno Glacier. And then Bariloche was actually probably my favorite of the communities in Patagonia. It's kind of people would consider that in Patagonia still, right?
It's kind of like between the Lake District and sorry, I'm losing my voice. Between the Lake District and Patagonia. So some people might say, oh, it's not Patagonia, but I think it's kind of right on the cusp of Patagonia.
Yeah, but so much amazing hiking to do. A little bit expensive. quite busy during the summer, and can be hard to get around places because of that. Logistically, so you kind of have to plan ahead. Can't just wing it as much as you might like to.
Would you say winter, like around April, May, would be an okay time to go, or would you say don't go because it's going to be too cold and you're not going to have a good time?
So I think you just need to prepare. So for us, we were doing this 6-month backpacking trip of South America, and it was mostly like hot places.
Yeah.
So we were in Colombia, we were in Brazil, we were in Peru, and then we went down to Patagonia in their fall, and we just did not have the clothing to be prepared for that. But if you know, like, hey, I'm going to Patagonia in April, and you bring the clothing, you bring the sweaters and the gloves, winter hats.
Yeah.
Then you're perfect, and it's much more quiet and relaxed. So I think that's a really good time to go.
Yeah, I love getting away from the tourists. Like, I love getting away from just places with so many people. Like, I feel like I just feel a lot more like I can connect with my trip a bit more, and I can really, I don't know, I just enjoy nature. I just really enjoy nature, and I love when I can get away from the city. So I think that'll be cool. I think it sounds like a good time to go. Yeah.
Yeah, I would probably go a couple. Whoa. I hope you can edit this out. I would probably go a couple weeks earlier than we went. We went mid-April, and I would probably go maybe like beginning of April.
Thinking like mid-May.
Okay, yeah. Most things are closed at that point. So do your research on that, because it's as soon as it snows, things close, the buses stop, that sort of thing.
Okay.
We went like beginning of April. Or mid-April, like the penguins had just gone in Ushuaia, so that's like a major thing to see. We'd seen penguins, so we weren't like super upset about it, but I would have liked to see the penguins.
Yeah.
And then just things like the W track is really, it's like you can get a spot really easily, but it's quite cold, so it's not ideal camping.
Yeah.
So I think that going a couple weeks earlier would have been maybe a little bit more perfect.
I've got a couple of options around the area, so I might say Patagonia. At least you make me reconsider. I might say Patagonia for a couple months later or something. Yeah, like I just feel like it's pretty good to leave things fluid and kind of not lock anything in right now and just keep it spontaneous. So this has been good tips about Patagonia. Thank you guys.
No worries.
What plans do you guys have for 2018? So that was a bit of fun with that little segment. But what do you guys kind of got on the horizon?
Yeah, so we're here in Mexico until May, and one of the awesome things about living in Mexico City is that it's really affordable and accessible to get to other parts of the country. Like, you can fly basically anywhere in Mexico for under $100 round trip, and under 2 hours for sure anywhere. Yeah. So quite a few small trips around Mexico. One to Central America, and then we're headed back to Canada for the summer from May until the end of October. And then we really don't know what's after that. We're going to have to figure it out. But yeah, we just recently found our place to stay for the summer in Canmore, Alberta, which is kind of where we call home. So yeah, Mexico, Canada, maybe somewhere after that. I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll go somewhere after that. We're just not too sure right now.
That sounds good. I think we should stay in touch and grab a creepy coffee. What do you reckon? Okay, so I think this has been fun. I'm really, really happy to have you guys on the show and happy to kind of have a bit of a chat about travel and just to meet you guys as well. You've been really cool, and thanks for coming on again. Do you guys have anything else you kind of want to throw out there, or anything you want to say to the audience about maybe a piece of advice or anything else you want to leave them with?
If you've been thinking about, going traveling or taking a trip abroad or changing your career, or there's something that kind of is, you feel like deep down is really like calling at you to do, I would say just go and do it. It's always going to be scary, but just go and do it. It's always going to be worth it as well.
Yeah, I second that.
I love it. Okay, cool.
Hope you enjoyed my chat with the World Wanderers. These guys are awesome. If you want some more information about them, go onto iTunes and just type in the World Wanderers. You'll get their podcast. It's really good listening, full of travel, tips, inspiration, and stories. It's just an awesome podcast. Check it out. They've also got a website, theworldwanderers.com. If you want to hear more about Amanda's other podcasts, all about mastering the business of yoga, it's m.b.om podcast. So check that one out. But upcoming on the Good People Effect, I've got a chat with a Buddhist monk. We met up one day. We just kind of sat in his meditation garden and had a chat for about an hour and a half. And honestly, this was one of the best days of my life. I spoke to him for about an hour and a half just about life, and it was so relaxing, so peaceful, so insightful. I just left that environment feeling a million times better than I had when I walked in. And I think, I'm pretty sure, I'm not 100%, but I think by listening to this podcast, you can feel the same way too. So that whole thing was filmed and it's going to go onto my new video channel, which doesn't exist just yet, but stay tight. I'll keep you posted. There's also an episode with an upcoming local artist, Danielle Weber. So Danielle is just really, really cool. We just sat down, had a bit of a chat about creativity, inspiration, and kind of her journey, which I found really, 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 really cool, mind-blowing, and it made me feel really good. And it made me feel like I wanted to put a bit more discipline, and I wanted to put a few more focus points into my life just from that chat. So that was real good. That episode's coming up soon as well. So if you haven't had a chance yet, jump on the Good People Effect at Good People Effect Instagram. And yeah, that's about it, guys. Take it easy.
To find more information, relevant links, and photos talked about in this week's episode, check out theworldwanderers.com.
If you have a question, comment, or feedback, send us an email at info@theworldwanderers.com. Join our community on Facebook at The World Wanderers or on Twitter at World Wanderers1. As always, thanks so much for listening.
Have a great day.
Bye.